Brought to you by BedroomBattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. What have you been up to lately, Mark? What's on the painting table?
So, I haven't actually painted anything for a little bit. I had a massive blitz of painting from March through till September, where I painted 2 pretty big armies, and I was really pleased with it. And then I kind of got to the end and sort of stalled a little bit near the end, and then sort of thought, no, I can get this done, and got that bit of final motivation to get across the finishing line. And then, as these things are, when you do something that's probably pushed you a bit further than you used to, it kind of burnt me out a bit. So I just gone with it and thought, okay, that's all right, and just letting it just sit there. And I've still got to do the basing and on all these figures, and that sounds like a bit of a daunting task. So I've been doing a bit of terrain and things like that, just changing it up a bit, trying to play a few games, just not really too worried about goals and getting things done, because I was really pleased with setting that goal and sticking to it, but I couldn't do that all year round. It was too much, really. So good for them, but yeah, just been taking the foot off the gas recently. What
were the 2 armies you were doing?
So it's kind of the historical figures, I suppose. They're all Perry miniatures, 19th century stuff, so a mixture of Napoleonics and some Franco-Prussian War figures they do, and some American Civil War. So it's all kind of sort of that 19th century time period. And not really stuff that should actually go together, but it's trying to do something that's kind of a bit like those old school imaginations things where, you know, you just come up with 2 random countries and then just you can. So that's sort of the idea behind it, but I haven't really fleshed it out completely. It was a bit of an impulsive project that I just thought, I really want to do this. And so I just kind of got on and did it. And yeah, really glad I have, but there's lots more yet to come on it. So my ambition is to kind of flesh out the world a bit more and try and kind of realise what that looks like and what these 2 countries are, and then think about maybe some kind of narrative campaign using the 2 armies and sort of breaking them up into smaller forces and having some skirmish things and then maybe some big battles. And so it's all just fun and games, really, with no particular clear direction on what I'm trying to achieve. But I'm kind of enjoying that, just the sort of fumbling through it and kind of finding my way along as I go. So yeah, it's just been really good fun and a chance to paint up cool figures with nice bright colours. And I think that's the thing, is by doing the stuff with those 19th century uniforms, you can do, like, you know, red coats and blue French uniforms, but you don't have to stick to all one colour for one army and get bored. You can, so they're all very multicoloured and bright and garish, really, but good fun.
Did I see you were doing some Oathsworn stuff as well?
They're from a few years ago, actually. So that's the Burrows and Badgers range, and that was actually what I got back into the hobby with after the sort of 25-year deep freeze from when I stopped playing as a kid. And it's really funny, actually, because we were quite a lot of us in the community and hear people on podcasts and talking about it in the hobby, and sort of, I went into a deep freeze and then there was this trigger and I kind of came back out. And I can't for the life of me remember what was that triggered me into even looking at tabletop games, because I definitely wasn't looking and I wasn't keeping up with it or reading magazines or reading novels or anything. So I don't quite know what it was, but either way, it was the Burrows and Badgers game and the miniatures that I got back into the hobby with my oldest daughter, so this would have been 2018, so she would have been sort of 12 or 13 at the time. And so, yeah, we ended up getting those, 11 or 12 actually. So, yeah, she was quite young, and I bought basically 2 war bands of their really brilliant figures and painted those up, and then we bought the rules, and we just played that for about 6 months or a year. And that was kind of the main game, if you like. And then as these things go, you start then seeing other things, and then it leads to a serious case of getting in a bit too deep and buying far too many things and having too many different games to play and not enough people to play with. But yeah, that was the starting point. I haven't actually played the game for a couple of years now, but it's a really good game, and but the figures are ace. And one of the guys on the Discord mentioned about how he really liked the game. Oh, it's because you were looking for a Jareth model, weren't you, for Labyrinth? And so people
That's
were
right.
talking about those kind of whimsical fantasy things, and that Burrows and Badgers range definitely ticks that box. Very sort of like reminiscent of the Redwall books.
Definitely, yeah. Aye, that's what grabbed me about them, because I read a lot of them when I was younger. So I've got a bunch of them. I painted them similarly, like they were, part of the first batch of miniatures I bought when I got back into the hobby. But
was that a similar time then, sort of 5 or 6 years ago?
Like 2018. I've kind of pinpointed it.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's exactly when I was doing it. Maybe there's some sort of trigger. And,
something must have flew by Earth or something.
Yeah, and they just found something where all the people who have got that kind of weird gene in their brain that attracted them to Goblins and Citadel combat cards in 1990, and they reactivated it.
Yeah. I was I did paint them up initially, but I didn't do a very good job, and I ended up stripping them, and now they're in the to-do list.
Okay.
Which is, well, a big list, but I'll get round to them eventually. I'm pretty slow. I kind of get, like, if I'm on a good week, I'll get an hour Tuesday night, an hour Wednesday night, and an hour Thursday night. But it's rare for me to get the hat trick. Usually there's something or other that comes up.
Yeah.
But 3 hours a week, you can still slowly, like, when I look back after 6 months, I've achieved a lot. But it doesn't seem in the day, the week-to-week stuff, that I'm getting very far. So
yeah, I had to really change it when I was doing those big armies, because I kind of knew that the speed at which I'd been painting wouldn't be achievable. And you'd spoken to Jason on the podcast about his approach, and he was sort of saying about almost to strip it down to the, you're saying about an article in White Dwarf was showing how to paint skeletons or something relatively simple sounding, and it was like 30 steps, and he worked out that would mean that it'd take 4 or 5 years or something to paint what he wanted, and he just didn't want to do that. He wanted to get it done in a year, for example. So how to sort of like reduce down the amount of work by 5. And I think I very much did that with what I was doing before. So because they've kind of got that sort of slightly shiny toy soldier look about them, then there's nothing really complicated going on in terms of, other than just get a colour painted on fairly neatly, next colour, go, and doing a lot of batch painting, so painting 36 figures at a time, just do all the red coats, all the black boots. But I don't know whether or not I enjoyed it as much as a more natural approach. I probably didn't really. So looking forward to what I want to paint next, I'm actually quite looking forward to taking my time and doing some stuff really quite slowly.
Yeah. I've got a kind of, I think I've settled into a reasonable enough system. So at the moment, I've got 2 full 15mm armies, an Orc army and a kind of Empire army. And I'm working through them 1 unit at a time. I'm nearly finished 1 unit of each. But my system here is kind of, and it's obviously, it's not as grueling as doing units in 28mm. They're obviously a bit smaller. But now that I'm just tidying up this second unit, the Orc unit, what I'm going to do now is just a handful of stuff that I just wanted to paint. So I got some Ralpartha stuff.
Right, yeah.
Just a couple of, I've got no purpose. They'll find their way into games, obviously, but I thought, let's just have a wee palette cleanser, and then we'll go back to the monopose, working through a regiment. But again, 15mm, it's not as intensive as its 28mm counterpart. So
I was going to ask you about that, actually, because I've not painted anything at all, got any figures other than 28mm figures. And it kind of crossed my mind that on a 15mm figure, in some ways, there must be some things that are a bit harder. Like, if you need to paint like the hands and they're holding a sword or something, and you want to paint the flesh colour on the hand, is that not trickier because it's smaller?
Yeah, I mean, it's the models are still really detailed considering the scale. Like, especially the Ralpartha stuff, it's just an immense amount of detail. When you think about, like, these will be hand sculpted, and at that scale, there's a lot of detail. But yeah, it's tricky, trickier, but not like, we're not talking like anywhere near 6mm scale.
No. Was that very different? Is that much more like impressionistic, how you have to paint them, just kind of...
Aye, I mean, 6mm, I wasn't probably embracing it to its full, but, it was like 2-3 colours. We've got the colour of the colour of the soldier, and maybe a dot for a face and a dot for a weapon. So, 3 colour, like... but 15mm, you're still getting, I would say, more of the kind of painting experience that I'm used to, but on the plus side, you get through them quicker, and there's less detail for sure. But there are points where I'm struggling. Especially, I need to get some new brushes. Like, I've got just a batch of brushes. I've never bought expensive brushes or that, but I don't look after them very well, and I end up just using the same 2 or 3 all the time, and they're not great. They're not in great condition. So I was trying to do some eyes on my orcs last night, not pupils, but just a bit of white on them.
Yeah.
And I don't know as well if it's a psychological thing. Like, I turned 40 recently, and I don't know if I've got in my head now that my eyesight's failing. Like, I've just got this thing now.
It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah, like
I
I've
keep
talked
saying
myself
things to
into
my
it.
wife and saying about how old I am. She's like, you're not old at all. You just have. It's just the reality is when you're a kid, you just assume you're just a standard age, and then you become old, and it just falls off a cliff one day. So yeah, I think that there is that perception, isn't there, that at 40 you're going to lose your eyesight and lose your ability to do things. But yeah,
I think I'm just needing a better magnifier or that. Like, I've got these dodgy little glasses for pound stretcher. They were £1, and they're magnified. And I'll accidentally go away and try and do something with these glasses on, because if I've not got those on for painting, I've got another set on at night, and I'll just accidentally go away and I'll have these magnifier things on. I can't see anything. I'm trying to put the kettle on. I'm basically outside in the woods, dancing with a tree. So maybe just it's not so much eyesight; it's more I'm just going senile.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, to be honest. I think the brush thing, though, my brushes are cheap and they're okay, but they're not in brilliant condition. And yeah, I think that as the point starts going, it's an annoying thing. And there's something about spending money on them as well that I kind of really begrudge, which is stupid. But there's definitely been times where I've soldiered on with a brush that's really dog-eared and doesn't really work properly, and then end up messing stuff up, and then you have to go back and correct it. It actually makes the whole process quite irritating, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes you have a painting session where a few things come together. Maybe you're a bit unsure going in because there's a couple of tricky things in front of you, and you don't really know what's next, but you have this really good session and you come away from it feeling good about it. Well, I had the opposite last night, where I tried 4 or 5 different things. None of them I was particularly happy with. I don't like to finish on something bad, but at the same time, things weren't going well, and I thought, I don't want to keep just messing stuff up here that needs tidied up. So I did kind of finish up and think, well, I got stuff done, but not quite to the standard I was hoping. But I think that's just the nature of the beast sometimes, isn't it?
It is. There's a slightly weird relationship, isn't there, with the painting, whereby it feels like it's a thing that you have to get done, and it can at times kind of creep up on you, and you sort of feel like it's a bit of a chore. Like, I've got to put all this basing stuff on these figures that I've done, and I really don't want to do it. And I was moaning to my wife that I've got to do that, and she's like, well, this is literally entirely down to you that you're doing it. And no one knows you're doing it, and no one cares other than you. So it's quite a weird thought, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, hang on a minute, this is totally for pleasure, and yet it's kind of annoying me. So I think sometimes you just have to switch your mindset on it a bit, don't you? And just think, oh yeah, I chose to do this, and some parts of it are more enjoyable than others, but all of it as a whole is a good thing, and I'm happy to be doing it. So
yeah, I find generally the hardest part is starting, but because I've only got those 3 nights a week that I get the opportunity, even if I don't feel like it, I know that I'll feel better once I've started. Once I've started, I'll almost always enjoy it. Even if it's not going that well, I still enjoy it. But it would always be easier in the evening, especially every second night I'm putting the wee one to bed, and you kind of come out of her room just like, like fried. And it would be a lot easier just to go and watch a telly or that, but I've never really done that in the evenings. I've never liked sitting watching TV. So,
there's something, there's definitely something nice about no matter how little you do, you've transformed something because you're putting down a sort of layer of permanent paint on something. You can directly see that you've done it, can't you? Whereas if you watch a TV program or play a video game or something like that, then it's more kind of in the moment and in your brain, but there's nothing physically changes about the world. So it's quite nice doing stuff like that.
Yeah, especially if you're in a job, or a knowledge work job, a computer job. You're not doing any of that.
Don't really do
stuff.
anything, do they? To be honest, so just like, well, what do you do today? It's like, just click to mouse. And press some keys on a keyboard. Yeah, that's what you physically did, and that's quite a weird thought. It's quite abstract.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking the other day about this with my colleague, and how, like, in your role at work, you could have a day where you do, like, within the boundaries of your job, achieve really good things. You help people, you fix things, but you don't really come out it with the same level of satisfaction as, say, for example, you go out and, like, paint a fence, or you fix the tyre, or you change the oil in your car, or you paint something, I don't know why, but there's just, like, so much more satisfaction in that manipulation of something in the physical world.
I think it must be very hardwired into us, that kind of active craft and doing things and creating things and creating safe spaces and achieving stuff. It's kind of measured by physical trinkets and trophies, and it's sort of, you look back in history and that's how people operated, and it's kind of a relatively modern thing now, isn't it, that everything's digital, and the experiences are kind of much more sort of transitory, aren't they, that we have. So I think there is a bit of that. I think that's why probably, I was thinking, there was a bit of a chat in the Discord the other day. Someone said about there's this Space Weirdos game that sounds quite cool that people are chatting about. And someone had got it printed off, like a nice little spiral bound. It looked really good. And you're just like, oh, that's cool. It's just something kind of great about being able to. It's great that a publisher can publish something on a website and charge £5 to download it as a PDF. So that's a brilliant route to market for that independent publisher and rules writer. They don't have to get involved with the printing process or get a publisher to represent them. But then the customer is still gaining a kind of high quality printed output. And I think that really appeals. And you just think, it's really nice, just the idea of having stuff on paper and it being kind of a real tactile hobby from beginning to end.
I have done a bit of that myself in the past, where I've bought rules that were PDF only, and I used a service called Print My PDF. I laugh because I know I could just unsubscribe to their emails, but like I get an email from them like every week, and it just asks me, like, do you like printed documents? I'm like, well, I've bought like 6 or 7 from you, so yes. I never open the emails. They maybe have offers or that, but
it is brilliant when you get emails from companies who clearly sell a product that you only need once in a blue moon, but they email you
and
every
I already know about
hours.
you, and I'm a customer. But they're like, what about some more printed documents?
Yeah.
Like,
do you need any more tyres today?
Yeah.
Not really. No.
Aye, so I've done a bit of that in the past. Though, I could only buy these rules in PDF. I've got them printed, and I do like to have them tangibly. I like something I could hold and leaf through, especially if you were literally playing with it. I think the last thing I would want to do is have have to involve a computer or any sort of, or at least if I was involved in technology, I'd want it to be minimalist. It's interesting you mentioned Space Weirdos. I was going to ask you about that because I had seen a lot of conversation. Is that not something you've dipped into yet then?
No, I didn't really know anything about it. It sounds like there's a fantasy version as well. The one thing that piqued my interest about it is there's I think Carl shared an article about it on the Discord server, about how it worked with similar to this. We've talked before about how think Mayhem uses the different polyhedral dice, doesn't it, to represent your statistic, and so it sounds like it does something similar to that. But I think you're rolling like perhaps 2 of the same dice, so you're still getting the variation that's quite good with the different dice, but it's kind of a little bit more level because you're more likely to get an average result in the middle. So rather than like a D4, and it's like, I only got a 1, and then the next person gets a 4, and you're like, oh, brilliant, and then that happens 3 times in a row or something. So I think if you're rolling 2, at least chances are that people are going to get 3s and 4s more averagely. It did sound really good, actually. Like a good way of combining that variation that is in some games, but with a little bit more predictability. Because the only thing when you introduce too many different things, like new dice or new this or new that, the other, sometimes it can just kind of play a bit with your basic understanding of what might happen. So it sounded really good.
I reckon I'll get on the bandwagon and get a copy. And I was kind of torn with this because I'm saying to myself, like, there's already loads of games that you've got that you're not playing, but then at the same time, I don't see this as going into Games Workshop and buying a £90 box with like sprues.
It's like £5, isn't it?
Yeah, like you're not diving into getting all the miniatures and stuff. You're literally getting a book, and even if you just enjoy a read through the rule book and looking at the artwork and stuff, which I do, that's enough value for me. Like, maybe I'll play it. Hopefully I'll play it, but even if I just maybe just enjoy the rules, maybe see a couple of things that I feel I could add to something else in the future. So, I
agree. I think it's a bit like collecting cookery books or recipe books, isn't it? It's not dissimilar. It's like, how many things did you actually make out of it? Well, it doesn't really matter. If you enjoyed reading it and having a look, and it might give you a bit of inspiration. That sometimes that's kind of what these things are. Really, they're just something that's a bit of. And I've bought things in the past and looked at them and thought, oh, actually, I don't think I would play it. But I still didn't really regret buying it, because out of a sense of kind of maybe helping me understand what it is I do and don't like.
Did you get the Rogue Trader book for Games Workshop?
No, I didn't order it, actually. I half wondered about it, and out of complete... I don't know why, but I just didn't really want to give them any money, which is awful, really, because... I don't know why I've become so angry with them, because they really have had very little negative impact on my whole life. They've only had positive impact really in the past, but I think a lot of people feel a bit betrayed by them and think they're a bit evil, which I don't know. I definitely do, but I know it's completely irrational. But I didn't pick it up, but I think probably because what I've heard of it is it's really fun and it's quite quirky and it's quite interesting, but I've heard it's like insanely complicated to try and play.
I'm never going to play it. I just wanted to have a
coffee
the book
table
and read
book
it.
kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
Does it look really cool? You've had yours, haven't you?
It came really quickly, but I gave it to my wife. I said, just give me this for Christmas. It felt a bit anticlimactic because it said like this will probably take like 6 months to come to your house. And then the
as
next
if they're
day,
like, we're going to wait till all the orders are in and commission the finest paper makers in the land to come and present what they're going to do for us.
But like the next day they emailed and said it's on its way, and then it came like the following day. So I was a bit like, I don't just want to open it now. And Christmases and that it's always good to double these things up. So I just said to my wife, just give me this for Christmas. And I've also asked for the one where oh god, what's their names now? I should know this. The really cool looking book that come out this year. Ex-editor of White Dwarf, Robin Jews, John Stallard.
The I know the ones with all the interviews. I can't think what they're called, but it's like a 2-volume thing, isn't it? That looks really good.
I've asked for that. I don't know if I'll get it now because I've handed a book over for me to get back. But did you make up a wee Christmas list or that? Anything you're wanting for Santa?
Well, yeah, actually, I've got something quite exciting that my wife's agreed to get me for Christmas, which is she's going to pay for me to have some one-to-one painting lessons with Josh.
I wondered where that was going there. Could have went anywhere. She's going to pay for me to have some.
So just some some special online sessions with someone in Japan. That's all been lined up. So yeah, that's the plan. So I'm really excited about that, and I've heard via some people, including George in our community, about how great these lessons are. So I had a chat with Josh, and he was just like, "Yeah," just told me how it works, and the idea of actually going to someone like that who's just a brilliant painter and just trying to learn some techniques and understand what it is I'm doing, because I think quite a lot of what I do is like I'm happy with, but I don't feel like when I look back at those Burrows and Badgers miniatures I painted 5 years ago, actually I'm really pleased with them on one hand, which is great, but I also think, oh, well, maybe I haven't got any better. And I think I probably haven't. I think I probably sort of like maxed out a bit. And I have no idea how you do like the really cool stuff. Like, I know you blend two colours together really smoothly or do really nice little highlights on the edge of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping to get from that. So I think that's a pretty cool Christmas present. And I'm also of that age where like actually owning any more objects and putting them in my house is a completely terrible idea. So experience,
because you'll be dead soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm already 43, so yeah, I think the clock's ticking.
Aye, but for anyone who's not aware, it's Josh you're talking about for the Crown of Command podcast.
Yeah,
isn't
so
it?
Josh, who runs the Crown of Command community, and they've got podcasts, YouTube channels, all sorts of things. He's like a media baron now. He's full-time painter as well. That's his main job, and he offers painting tutorial lessons. And he used to work for DW in the 90s in their shops, and he was an heavy metal painter for a while. So he's top quality and a really lovely guy.
His stuff's exceptional, and like you're saying, George did some lessons with him, and it'll be fantastic. I'd be keen to try that out myself next year if I got the time. So it'll be interesting to hear how you get on with that. You'll be entering Golden Demon next year, I'm sure. Your Gold Space Marines will finally get the paint job they deserve.
You never know.
Did you know that just like every other podcast out there, this show has its very own Patreon? But this is no ordinary Patreon. It's actually the worst Patreon ever. That's right, there's no rewards, no extras, no bonus content, no early access, no shout-outs and no thank yous. I'll just take the money and quietly get on with making the show. Not that there's any money to take, because hardly anyone's pledging to the thing. Like I say, it's the worst Patreon ever. Find it at bedroombattlefields.com/worst Patreon ever. That's all one word, worst Patreon ever. Now, back to the show. Anything else on your Christmas list whilst we're on that?
I don't think so, actually, no. I did kind of make a bit of when I decided to do these two big armies, and in fairness, it doesn't take up that much room now. They're all painted because they're all based like really tightly packed together. But either way, it was a lot of figures. So there's about 450 miniatures or something like that. So it's quite a lot. And I was like, well, okay, what I'll do is I'll get those. I've got some other things which I think I've mentioned before. I've got these like kind of Wicker Man-y folk horror type little war band things. So there's like some Morris dancers and some kind of like a May Queens and things like this. Is really cool, and a Scarecrow. So I've got those figures already, and I'm not planning on buying anything anytime soon. So I'm actually kind of, rather than thinking of things I want, I'm just actually trying to kind of say, right, well, what do I actually want? And it's probably to just go to events, meet people, play games, rather than buy stuff. That's kind of the point I've got to now. So yeah, it's not really a Christmas idea, but certainly in terms of like New Year's resolutions, it's more about kind of getting out there and doing stuff, I think.
It's a Christmas wish, Mark. You should
absolutely
write it on your list and put it up the fire, except not many people have fires now, so stick it on the radiator and watch it go brown.
Yeah. Put it in an air fryer.
You might have seen on the Discord, I'm flirting now with Armada, Mantic's Armada. So I got the rule book and the cards, the sort of counters and stuff. I got them for like a tenner off. I think really it was Firestorm Games. Yeah, because
I quite like it when you just get like the book and the bits, and you don't.
Yeah,
because like starter kits are cool, but sometimes you don't want like, I don't know, an orc fleet or something. You want something else. So yeah, that's really good.
I know, and because I'm still what I would class as doing my research, So it's like, you know, I've read the book and I like what I see. And just for like a bit of background, like I've always admired like some Man of War from a distance. I've never played it, never owned it, but you know, always loved the look of it.
Yeah,
and
it's super cool, isn't it?
Like folk are still playing it, but it's long out of print, and I know you could get proxies, and I know you could find the rules online, but I do just like that simplicity of like, I'm just going to get into this game because it's, you know, it's supported and it's in print.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm getting into it new anyway, so it's not like I already knew how Man of War worked or that.
Yeah,
so,
the nostalgia's more for the aesthetic, not for the
exactly.
Actual structured gameplay.
So I was looking at like, I mean, the rules are straightforward but fun looking, different to what I'm used to, you know, when you're moving a miniature figure around like a soldier around the table or a regiment. Movement's a lot more flexible, but when you're looking at ships, you know, you're going to need to be a lot more tactical, and I like the thought of that.
Plan the movement differently, I guess, as it's
like you can't just stop and turn and go the other way and stuff like that. So, and in terms of like fleets and that as well, I initially thought that I would, because I didn't realise that Armada was based on, what's it called now? Black Seas by Warlord. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's the same rules, isn't it? But that's like a historical
just adapted for fantasy
game. Yeah, that's cool.
But looking at the ships for sale for that, like, you have to literally like do the rigging and stuff with like, I think it's like string or twine or that. And I'm like,
it looks like the kind of thing that would make your toes curl, and then you'll end up tearing it up and I don't know, throwing it across the room. It just looks really infuriating. I really struggle with those kind of super fiddly things.
Yeah, I couldn't. And it did appeal to me to have two rival human fleets.
Yeah, just so fantasy, but like pretty low fantasy. So
yeah,
that's cool.
I mean, I would have loved to do a Norse fleet or, you know, Viking fleet or that, but it seems to be, you know, it's a lot of cannons and stuff. It's more Age of Sail than Age of Ore and Axe. So, but I'll have to look more into that. But yeah, I like the idea. Just, you know, two rival human fleets, like you say, low fantasy. We could throw a dragon in there maybe at some point, but the Mantic ships, actually, they negate all that trouble with the rigging and that, because all the sails and that are, you know, they're part of the miniature. But and they really look good. I know, like, probably both of us have been a bit critical of Mantic's older miniatures, but these do look fantastic.
Yeah, I think maybe the style as well, like the sculpting style, which is quite obviously done on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to suit things that would have been built by engineers and not creatures or something like that. You see what I mean? I think that's why the hand sculpted style, I think, looks so brilliant for fantasy miniatures, because you look at something like, I don't know, the old like Jez Goodwin Skaven or the Trish Carden stuff, and, you know, absolutely amazing dragons and things. You're like, yeah, that looks. You couldn't do that on the computer and make it look that good, because it's all about the natural look. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the boats look pretty smart, actually.
Yeah, they do. But, and again, it's not like I need to go out and buy these right now. Like, that's the last thing I should do, because I've got plenty to be getting on with. But the prices, like, they're, again, you know, Mantic are more of a Games Workshop than I think any other company that I'm aware of. They're not obviously on the same level.
They've nudged their prices up a lot, haven't they, in the last 5 years or so?
I think, like, 3 ships, 4 ships, you'd be talking 40 quid. And I'm thinking, a lot of money.
Like, how big are they?
Like, that's the thing.
The size of your palm of your hand or not?
Yeah, I'd want to be getting in it and, you know, taking it down the pond. But no, I don't think they're particularly big. So it's and again, you know,
that's a lot of money, isn't it? Yeah, for what would maybe, you know, in the past have only been a lot cheap. Yeah, Man of War boats weren't that much money. I remember I had someone years ago, and, you know, the plastic ones were quite cheap.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm used to, like, the companies I buy from, I'll pay 3 to 5 quid a miniature, and I'm just used to that. And I know there's a whole debate around, you know, I know some folks say they should be worth a lot more, and that's a whole other argument. But this is what I'm used to, and then to go to that pricing structure is just quite jarring for me. and it's just easy not to do it. And
it feels a little bit, if you're being cynical, like they've gone, well, you only need 9 for your side, so therefore if people are happy to pay 60 quid for 9, then just charge them 60 quid, rather than thinking what should each one cost.
Aye, it's almost like that, like, this is the value of an army, whether that's a 40k army, or a Warhammer army, or an Armada fleet, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's why those Perry miniatures are so good value, I think, because they're mass-produced plastics, but so is everything, really, technically. But, you know, they're like 30-40p a figure if you get them on a good deal.
Yeah.
And that's because they're selling them to people who want huge Napoleonic armies with, you know, 600 figures. So, actually, it's still a lot of money in total. Yeah, it's. I think you're right. I think that pricing does feel a bit off. You can get some good deals on the Armada stuff on different websites. I think Mantic charge a lot more on their site than you can get them for elsewhere. But it's still a lot of money, though, isn't it? So what are you thinking of doing then, potentially?
Just a couple of human fleets. So I saw on their shop, like the Basilians, I think they call them. Their ships look really cool. And then the Kingdom of Men ones as well. So in an ideal world, I'd get 2 of those fleets,
cool.
1 each. But I'll need to keep an eye on deals and stuff like that. And I won't be looking for a lot. You know, I'm not going to be playing on a 6x4 or that.
Yeah.
So 3 or 4 a piece will do me, I think. And it will just give me that option for a ship game. I've always kind of been interested in nautical stuff, chippies. But like I read James Cook's book, Captain Cook's book, he didn't write it, but a book about him a couple of years ago. So I've always found that sort of seafaring age quite interesting. So
there's something quite cool about it, isn't there? And I think that I remember when Man of War came out, just thinking, this is such a brilliant idea, just like kind of bringing in this different aspect of, and they had Mighty Empires probably still at the time, you know, it's kind of the idea that you could do that kind of campaign-based thing, and there's a little sea battle going on here, and then this happens at land, and I don't know, just it makes it all feel a bit more complete, doesn't it?
I've always thought of that, like I want a game for every genre, if that's the right term, you know. I want my dungeon crawler, I want my skirmish games, you know, I've got my mass fantasy game, my mass battle game, like naval warfare
to replicate different kind of levels of conflict or challenges or whatever it might be. Then I think that's right. I think that's kind of one of the things that I've got on the subject of these armies I've done. They're kind of like, you know, 19th century sort of imagination stuff, but I've also picked up some these flying airships, like Victorian sci-fi flying airships from Irregular Miniatures. They were like really cheap. It's like Irregular Miniatures, one of these old companies that sell like quite a strange range, mostly 6mm, and they do 2mm figures, they do all sorts of stuff, and they got an appalling website that's almost impossible to navigate, and you know, which is kind of charmingly bad. But I picked up these things. There was something like, I spent some like 14 quid, and I've got, I think, something like 16 metal ships that are about 10 centimeters long each. And I got some flying stands from war bases that they did on a custom order for me. And I'm going to use those for a kind of almost like a airship naval kind of element to the campaigns for the games that I'm going to play on the land. So this kind of slightly steampunky kind of airship stuff. So I think that'd be quite cool. I've got this set of rules from Osprey called, I think, what's it called? Castle in the Sky. And I'm going to give that a try. It looks really a bit overcomplicated, so I might strip it down a bit because, to be honest, I think it's aimed at people who like, with naval stuff, you know, you can have all this hit this part of the hull and this caused this thing, and, you know, like really granular levels of damage. But I think I might just try and strip down a bit to test the water, really. But it looks good fun.
I like that. I've got a ship card here. There's a toilet blocked on the lower decks, and we need to get to that.
Exactly. But that kind of thing is quite cool, though, isn't it? Because it sort of zooms out, but then zooms in. So you've got this sort of more zoomed out scale, and you're looking at it from above, and everything's tiny, but then you're thinking about what's going on. I quite like the idea that, like, if you were on a boat as well, the way that like morale would work is really different. Like, you might not know that it's all going horribly wrong if you're on a massive boat. And, you know, it's just kind of like the whole atmosphere must be totally and utterly different. to a land battle. So yeah, anything that can simulate that a bit, but without overly making it overly complicated, is what I'm looking for.
I mean, I've been toying with this thought in terms of like skirmish games between, again, just single soldiers or whatever. Like if you go on a really small scale skirmish, 2-3 aside. And again, there'll be games out there that do this, definitely, but I've not come across them. So like, I'm playing against you and I have a guy and he shoots one of your guys with an arrow and we just say, oh, you hit him, points deducted or whatever. But, what about thinking about where it hit and what implications that has? So it hits a leg, and that character is then slower or even, grounded. It hits an arm, so maybe the fighting skill is reduced because that's your sword arm. So it's a headshot and you're dead. It's often just, and I know why we do it, because we can't get too granular over a certain amount of miniatures or it would become impossible. But if you went really small scale, 2-3 guys, you could get into that. I've been shot in the
I think
knee
that
whatever.
The mechanics in a lot of role-playing games kind of lend themselves towards that, because each person's one person and that's it. And I think that, from what I know, the sort of the point at which wargaming and RPGs kind of not split as such, because it's almost like RPGs came out of historical wargaming, and it's kind of what at that point in the 70s when Gary Gygax was coming up with D&D, what was the kind of the point where there was more I think there would have been more stuff on the market that was geared up to that kind of granularity. But it's just, and then the accessibility of it and the speed at which it plays just kind of comes into things. Like the idea that you might play a game like that and you're like, oh, well, this happened, and then this person turns around and then they hit this person on the side of their leg and this causes that. You might find that it takes you like an hour to play out something that's worth a few seconds of real time.
Yeah.
And you've got to really be kind of into it if you want to do that. So I can see the appeal, but at the same time, it's quite an ask, isn't it, of everyone around the table to want to be on that same page. Yeah,
you might have seen, like, I'd done a wee YouTube video actually around that scenario that I'd been planning. The one where I was going to have like this eldritch beast go into this village, and he was going to try and convert as many villagers, like NPCs essentially, over to his side, because after a certain amount of turns, these bounty hunters were going to turn up and fight him. So it was about winning as many or making as many allies as he could before that happened. And I wasn't sure what rule set I was going to use for that, but I ended up opting for Song of Blades and Heroes because there's so little stat lines for each character. So if I ended up with quite a lot of them on the table, the last thing I wanted was to totally have to stat all of them up. They've got all these different stats for everyone. It would have been a bookkeeping nightmare. So going with Song of Blades and Heroes, you've literally got the quality in the combat, and maybe if it's a unique character, a couple of special rules, but there's no bookkeeping there. So when you're doing a scenario like that there's a lot else going on. Simplicity for the miniatures and the characters and the stats is going to be better.
Yeah, that makes really good sense, actually. I've never really thought of it like that, but sometimes it's almost like, because you've also got a really story-rich narrative thing. I think sometimes some of the criticism that like the Joe McCulloch games gets is a bit unfair. People say, oh, it just uses the D20 and it's really swingy and it can do this. And that's true. But because it's got a lot of story type elements in the game, you don't actually want the game to be mechanically too complicated, do you? Because otherwise you can go and get a bit distracted from, I don't know, it's a bit like chess has got zero story, it's 100% mechanics, and you can just focus on the mechanics and, becomes very non-narrative and potentially, it's a terrible spectator sport type of thing. There's no story to be said. So, yeah, it depends on what you're aiming for, doesn't it, really? But I think that's a good idea, using Songs of Blades and Heroes, because if anyone were to be critical of that, they'd say, oh, it's a bit simple. But, yeah, given you could have had any number of converts, then it's just too big a risk, isn't it, to have a complicated game system against that as well?
Yeah, here's this old woman that's come out and been converted. Like, what's her stats? You know, like 6 different stats for her and stuff. And it's like, that's...
Yeah, and what difference would it actually make as well
I know,
in the end?
yeah.
Because the weighted numbers would probably be a bigger factor in how difficult the game was than what statistically each of them is valued at, sort of thing.
Yeah. Aye, and it backs up, you know, that developing thought that I've had as well about, like, a couple of years ago, I think I was always on the search for, I'm mainly into skirmish games, I think, like most of us are these days, but that search for, like, you know, what is the game with the perfect combat mechanic? And, you know, is it Frostgrave, is it Rangers, is it Song of Blades and Heroes, open combat, you know, Brutal Quest? And then you come to realise, like, no, these games are all great, but pitched battles are pitched battles. You know, you'll only get so many legs out of them. It's the narrative, it's the story. And once you've got good stories and good narrative, any game will work fine. You just need to, you know, that's what we're really into, I think, most of us, is the story. So there's plenty good gaming systems out there, but none of them are going to give you that, like, you know, the combat mechanic here is so amazing that I'm never going to need story, or that it could just be me and the other guy fighting each other forever. Like, that's never going to work, because you'll eventually get bored of just, you know, a fight with no background story at all.
Yeah, I think the fact that actually, if someone said, do you fancy playing a game of anything? Oh, it's got amazing mechanics, it's absolutely brilliant. We're just going to just do it on the kitchen table, just use pieces of card. You think, I don't really want to. It just sounds a bit dry. You know, the miniatures, the terrain, all that, that's yet further evidence that there's much more to it than just the rules. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a very experiential thing, isn't it? You just want to see a kind of like a little film happening in front of your eyes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I noticed, swinging back to Armada, that there are a couple of, I say a couple, there are like 7 or 8 really good looking scenarios in the book.
Oh, cool.
Which is a great start as well. I always like when you get, and it's harder for, like, I read a lot of skirmish games and they give you scenarios. It's very hard, it seems, for the writers to come up with much original stuff because it's all been done. But with ships, you've got, you know, a bit road less travelled. It's not really a road, it's under the water, but looking forward to eventually trying them out, I would hope.
Cool. Yeah, no, that does sound good. Yeah, because the function of the ships in the first place is completely different, isn't it? They're, you know, are they out to try and stop pirates, or are they trying to blockade something to stop, you know, supplies coming through, or whatever it might be? Yeah, so that's really cool.
Fix a toilet.
Yeah.
I was looking on Etsy, like, you know, talking of the miniature prices, and you always get decent prints on Etsy, but I'm a bit dubious. Like, the price is right on Etsy, but I'm dubious about things like masts and that. I don't want to be making my own sales, and I don't want to get prints where the masts are going to be really fragile and snap and stuff. So
yeah,
I might actually just bite the bullet and get the Mantic stuff further down the line. Again, I'm in no rush, but
it's going to be a bit more tried and tested, isn't it? And yeah, and if it did break when it arrived, you know, you could contact them, and you know that their customer service team would just sort you out. Yeah, that is true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I think the other thing that's probably quite relevant is the scale of those boats. I think that they're a completely different scale to the Man of War boats, but almost double the size.
Yeah,
so
I did wonder about that.
Work properly. It's quite important that they are proportionately, because it probably matters quite a lot. If you've only got a few models, you know, if one model is smaller, then they naturally have got quite a lot of advantage, haven't they, over other ones? And yeah, no, it's kind of buying all from the same range would just mean it all fits together and works. Yeah,
exactly. Because they're very specific turning criteria. Like in the card set that I got with the book, you've got it's like a little wheel with 2 chunks cut out of it. So some of your smaller boats have got like this wider turning circle, and then the bigger ones have got so it's like crucial that you've
quite
got
precise then, isn't it, really? Yeah.
So I will just eventually. It's a shame that I'll have to spend that much. Again, I know it's a whole other debate about perceived value and things, but I'm used to just getting stuff for like £3 on Midlam or whatever. So
yeah, I think there's probably some bargains to be had out there. And there's always some of these retailers who just have got surplus stock and they just want to get it gone. So yeah, no, I think worth having a Google around, isn't it? Just seeing what you can find.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we're reaching the end of the chat, Mark. It's been really good. Just a last thing I wanted to ask about was the wee Christmas meetup on the Discord. What's the crack there?
Oh, yeah. So on Monday, the 18th of December at 7 o'clock, what's it, Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, we've got a bit of a meetup that is... People have wanted to kind of get together. We've been chatting about having a physical meetup, which still really want to do, and maybe we're looking at doing something at Bring Out Your Lead in August. Brilliant. But what we thought we'd do is just a quick little Christmas party. So it's just really an online Google Meet session. People are very welcome to come to. If you're on the Discord, just send me a message and I'll send you the link to it. If you're not on the Discord, then join it and then do so. And everyone's welcome. It's just going to be sort of paint and chat, get to know each other, just a bit of that. I'm also planning on doing some kind of a novelty quiz of some description if I can find the time. But I do want to do that because I think that'll be quite good fun. All very open-minded, very relaxed. Just a nice little Christmas do. Better than the office party, I can guarantee it.
No photocopying your arse. Or maybe we will get into that, I suppose.
No, I
think
how it goes. Yeah, we're trying to go paperless, so just scan and just drop it into the Teams.
And then I'll send it to print my PDF. They'll stop emailing me then. They'll feel like we're not making this for you. So bedroombattlefields.com/discords where you'll find that. I'll turn up absolutely smashed. Monday night, excellent. I'll be on it. I'll have my Buckfast enema and I'll have my pile of white dwarfs for the quiz.
Excellent.
Party hat on and nothing else.
I really look forward to it.
Thanks for putting it together, Mark. I'm
no worries.
Looking forward to it too. So, that's Monday the 18th of December.
That's right.
You said?
Yeah.
7 o'clock. Cool. Anything else we've not covered just before we get it wrapped up then?
Yeah, I don't think so. No, it's been great. And thanks for having me back on for the 18th time.
Yeah, you're always welcome. We'll get your sticker sent off to you in the post tomorrow.
Thank you.
Cool. Cheers then, Mark.
That's great. Cheers, Matthew. See you soon.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please do share it with someone else you think might enjoy it too. And be sure to check out our Discord community of like-minded hobbyists, which you could find at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. It'd be great to see you in there.